Audible is the leading provider of spoken word entertainment and audiobooks, ranging from bestsellers to celebrity memoirs, news, business, and self-development. Every month, members get 1 credit to pick any title, plus 2 Audible originals from a monthly selection, and access to daily news digests from the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, and the Washington Post, as well as guided meditation programs. Between a full-time job in IT and a full-time job in podcasting, it gets harder and harder to sit down and read the books I'm interested in. This is where Audible comes in. I can listen on my daily commute, relaxing, or while out running errands and still get in the books I've been wanting to get into. You can download titles and listen offline anytime, anywhere. The app is free and can be installed on all smartphones and tablets. Now you can try Audible risk-free with a special 30-day free trial by visiting audibletrial.com/nerdery and murdery. That's audibletrial.com/nerdery and murdery. Don't let your busy life get in the way of that great book you've been wanting to read. Go get your free trial of Audible today. This podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp. This is Geoffrey, and we've talked about many times before that I experience problems and struggles with my mental health, and really without a healthy mind, being truly happy and at peace is hard. The good news is therapy does work. It's helped for me, but what is therapy exactly? It's whatever you want it to be. Maybe you're not feeling motivated right now and would like some tools to help. Or maybe you're feeling insecure in relationships at work, or you're not dealing well with stress. Whatever you need, it's really time to stop being ashamed of normal human struggles, and it's time to start feeling better because you deserve to be happy. And now you don't have to worry about finding an in-person therapist near you to help. BetterHelp is a customized online therapy that offers video, phone, and even live chat sessions with your therapist, so you don't have to see anyone on camera if you don't want to. It's much more affordable than in-person therapy, and you can start communicating with your therapist in under 48 hours. So join the millions of people who are seeing what online therapy is really about. It's always a good time to invest in yourself because you are your greatest asset. And there's a special offer to Nerdery and Murdery listeners. You can get 10% off your first month of professional therapy at betterhelp.com/nerdery and murdery. That's betterhelp.com/nerdery and murdery. Thanks again to BetterHelp for sponsoring this podcast.
This thing was the greatest thing since sliced bread. It was the best computer that was ever made, and then it just went away.
Welcome to episode 169 of Nerdery and Murdery.
Big 169. I'm Zig with your nerdery.
And I'm Geoffrey with your Murdery. Welcome to another week of the highs and lows and the ups and downs, the good and the bad and the nerd and the murd. We had a record meth bust down here. They were bringing meth across the border in a lettuce truck, or maybe lettuce trucks. I don't know. But it was 3,000 kilos.
3,000 kilos of meth?
Yeah.
Wow.
I think the estimated total, they said it was going to be like $48 million worth of meth that they seized coming across the border.
In lettuce?
Yeah.
Well, they probably just stood around and went, something smell like cat pee?
Yeah.
Stop that truck.
That's what I was telling Chelsea too. I'm like, they were trying to hide it in lettuce. That stuff reeks of cat pee.
Yeah, it does.
Reeks. But yeah, that was down in Pharr, Pharr, Texas, coming across the international trade, one of the international bridges. But I was like, damn, 3,000 kilos.
That's a lot of meth.
Yes, it was, man. And I also wanted to tell you, it sucks getting old.
Uh-huh.
I've had tendonitis in my arm to go along with my bursitis in my elbow.
Nice.
Couldn't golf for like 2 weeks. I golfed for the first time on Friday. tendonitis hurts.
Mhm.
Damn, it hurts. I mean, just sitting there, it hurts, and it sucks. And then on top of that, I have to have cataract surgery.
What?
Got cataracts in both eyes.
Oh man,
Yep.
you've already had your eyes lasered on.
I know. I got to get them replaced. They said there's all kinds of new technology. They can put these lenses in that if your prescription ever changes,
Mhm.
they can just shoot a couple lasers in there and just change it
Just
immediately.
shave them off.
Yeah, or
Nice.
whatever they do. They
Nice.
they can put bifocals in the lenses should you need those. I mean, I'm like, wow.
Okay, that sounds awesome.
I know it's like really wild, and I mean, I said, I don't know if I want to go for all this high tech. However, if you tell me that you can give me a heads up display in.
Yeah, you're gonna get cyber eyes.
So that'll happen in about a month.
Why do I have these two targeting things that connect to my hand?
I
Oh,
know.
that's from Shadowrun. Don't worry about that.
Yeah, I gotta go meet with the surgeon uh, late in about 4 weeks and then get it scheduled. So fun
Nice.
stuff, fun stuff.
Fun.
And I wanted to give a plug. I'm doing a beta reading for Michael Shanks over at Two Geeks and a Microphone. He's written a book
Have he
called
really?
called The Immortality Code, and he gave me um, an early copy that I'm beta reading for him.
Mm-hmm.
Giving any critiques, anything I find, anything like that. But the Immortality Code, and it should be released about the time this episode comes out,
Okay.
which is in October sometime, if I'm calculating up
I believe
correctly.
that's correct.
It will be available on their Ko-fi, which is their subscriber like ours is Patreon. They do Ko-fi, which I'm a member of, so I'll get it there. But I think he's also going to put it on Amazon. So just wanted to give a shout out to Michael Shanks for the Immortality Code. It's interesting. It's very, very interesting. I'm loving it.
Michael Shank's an awesome dude and a really creative dude too. So
Yeah. And it's not a long read at all. It's
Okay.
not a long read.
Like a novella.
Yeah. I'm in chapter 12 on it right now. So a lot of fun. I highly recommend it. Highly recommend it. I can't wait to get to the end of that one.
Sweet.
So yeah. You got anything?
Last week we had to drive up to Amarillo for Cree's grandmother's funeral,
Mm-hmm.
which was sad. But I have to
Very
say,
sorry.
the lady did have a nice run. She passed 5 days before her 89th birthday.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And I can't tell you, there's not a lot of trees up there.
Really?
Yeah, it's not. I don't like it. But there are a couple beautiful towns up there that I just had no idea that they were even up there, like Quanah and Chillicothe, and I hope I'm pronouncing that right.
Mm-hmm.
That's how they say it. So,
Well, you got Quanah
yeah,
right. I know Quanah's right.
yeah, Quanah, yeah. But yeah, it's wasn't actually not a bad drive, both directions.
That's cool.
Beautiful sunsets. That's what West Texas is known for. The sunsets that just take up the whole sky.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So we get to catch them both ways.
Cool. All right. Well, if nothing else, I'll let you take over on the nerdery side of the house.
Awesome. Today we're going to talk about Amigas.
Okay. The Amiga computer.
Mm-hmm. Amiga is a family of personal computers introduced by Commodore in 1985. The original model is one of a number of mid-1980s computers with 16 or 32-bit processors, 256 kilobytes or more of RAM, mouse-based GUIs, and significant improved graphics and audio compared to previous 8-bit systems. These systems include the Atari ST, released earlier that same year, as well as the Macintosh and Acorn Archimedes, based around the Motorola 6800 or 68,000 microprocessor. The Amiga differs from its contemporaries through the inclusion of custom hardware to accelerate graphics and sound, including sprites and a blitter, and a preemptive multitasking operating system called Amiga OS. So the Amiga OS, for those who've never seen it, it's much like the Warp for IBM or Windows for Microsoft or the Apple iOS. A lot of people learned how to use OSs on these Amigas because they were far and away a superior product at the time. The Amiga 1000 was released in July of 85, but production problems kept it from becoming widely available until early in 1986. The best-selling model, the Amiga 500, was introduced in 87, along with the more expandable Amiga 2000. The Amiga 3000 was introduced in 1990, followed by the Amiga 500 Plus and the Amiga 600 in March of 1992. Finally, the Amiga 1200 and Amiga 4000 were released in late 1992. The Amiga line sold an estimated 4.85 million units.
So when the Amiga 1000 was released in 85, I was still rocking my Commie 64.
Oh, yeah. Most people were.
Yeah.
Either Commie 64s or Apple IIs. Macintoshes weren't that big at that point.
They had them, though.
Yeah, they had them. They were out. But honestly, compared to the Apple II, and especially like the Apple IIe, they were seriously underpowered.
Yeah.
And compared to the Amiga, it was like the difference between shooting a bullet and throwing it.
Well, in the Apple II didn't have color, whereas the Apple IIe did.
Yes, the Apple IIe was an amazing machine. You get a bunch of those that are out on the trades. There was a limited run that had Woz, basically Steve Wozniak's signature on the outside of them, cut into the case. So the Apple IIe Woz is the one that you really want to find, and that thing's still incredible.
Well, in the Apple II and the Apple IIe was my first introduction into computers because our computer, our first computer lab at school had apples.
Had apples?
Yep. And then I think it was like a year or two later, it was either a year or two later, our computer lab changed and we had the Commodore PETs.
Nice. Yeah, we rocked Tandies in Fort Worth ISD.
Right. Yeah. When we moved from Wichita Falls to Fort Worth, then I went on the trash 80s.
Another beautiful city, Wichita Falls. That's a beautiful city.
Well, it is now. It had to do a lot of rebuilding from the tornado. So
yeah, the big tornado.
Yep.
79, is that right?
April 10th, 1979.
Wow. Burned into your brain, sir.
Yes, it is. You live through one of those, you tend to remember them.
Yes, sir. Early advertisements cast the computer as an all-purpose business machine, especially when outfitted with the sidecar IBM PC compatibility add-on. The Amiga was most commercially successful as a home computer with a wide range of games and creative software. It also found a niche in video production with the video toaster hardware and software, which we have spoken about before. And Amiga's audio hardware made it a popular platform for music tracks, software, the processor, and memory capacities enabled 3D rendering packages, including Lightwave 3D, Imagine, and tracers and predecessors to Blender. Now, we talked about computer graphics being run on a Cray just before this period. They were able to do computer generated graphics with Amigas and video toasters after it was released, and that's basically who bought most of the high end versions were special effects companies. You could get the video toaster up until like 1997. It was still being released because people still had these Amigas that they could plug them into. It's an appliance, just like that IBM PC sidecar that you could plug into your Amiga. And when they say plug in, actually, you just It was a large piece of equipment you plugged it into the side of and ran it that way through an expansion slot. They were just incredible. I mean, Babylon 5, all of that was done on Amigas with video toasters. All of it. Yeah. But Amiga suffered from poor marketing and a failure of later models to repeat the technological advances of the first systems, resulted in Commodore quickly losing market share to the rapidly dropping prices of IBM PC compatibles, which at that point had finally gained the 256 color graphics in 1987, as well as the fourth generation of video game consoles. Commodore ultimately went bankrupt in April of 1994 after a version of the Amiga packaged as a game console, the Amiga CD32, failed in the marketplace. It's because the games were terrible. Since the demise of Commodore, various groups have marketed successors to the original Amiga line, including Genesee, iTech, A-Cube, Systems, Searle, and Aeon Technologies. Amiga OS has influenced replacements, clones, and compatible systems such as Morph OS and AROS. Currently, Belgian company Hyperion Entertainment maintains and develops Amiga OS 4, which is an official and direct descendant of the Amiga OS 3.1, the last system made by Commodore and the original Amigas. Now, having said all that, I know there was a lot of information reading through. As far as a gaming computer went, which is what Amiga mostly sold as, it was probably the best on the market. People were years behind them. And I don't mean like, 18 months, like, Moore's Law. I mean, like, some of the stuff that was on the Amiga, you didn't see on regular PCs for 4-5 years later.
I never played anything on the Amiga.
Oh my God, there's some beautiful stuff on there. As a matter of fact, there is a company now that made the 64 and the VIC-20.
Mm-hmm.
They've made a mini Amiga 500 that has about 30 games on it, which is amazing. And they've got some of the ones that, that are, I'm thinking, I can't remember the name of it. Yeah, I can. It's called Another World, where you're basically this guy who wakes up on a planet and you've got to figure out how to get around it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God, it's amazing. It is so cool. But yeah, with the Amiga, I had I'm going to borrow the podback machine. It's 1986, the summer of. We get a new family that moved in down the street. The dad was a not BMX, an ex motocross racer, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he had just gotten into computers. He's the same guy that I bought all of the D&D books when they moved out.
Oh, okay.
That was his job. He worked for Commodore. He was a regional sales rep for
Amiga. Had said that, yeah.
Yeah, and he was like, "You want a computer?" Because I had a VIC-20 at home. He's like, "Oh yeah, I work for Commodore. Let me show you something." We walked into his back room. He lit that thing up, and I was blown away. I'm like, "What?" So he was like, "Here, play Marble Madness." I'm like, "Okay, play Marble Madness. It's fine. It's groovy." He's like, "Now let me show you what this thing can really do." And we set up. He's like, "You like Dungeons and Dragons stuff?" And we made a picture together and printed it off on his little color LaserJet printer, which is the first time I'd ever seen that. It was still, even though it was a LaserJet, it still had tracks.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It was a Okidata. So we're sitting down and we make this picture. He's like, "Yeah, we need a wall. Hey, here, put a dragon here." I'm like, "Oh, hey, here's a wizard." He's like, "Yeah, I'd put that wizard there." So together we made this wonderful picture and printed it out. It was on my wall for years. Yeah, he's like, "This is what these things can do." And I was like, "That's amazing." How, he's like, "Well, we're selling them." He's like, "I can't sell them to you directly, but," and he didn't have like I want to say it was an Amiga 2000 prototype. It may have just been Amiga 1000 again. I was so blown out by the graphics quality of it. It blew me away, and the sound. I didn't realize computers could do that. Again, I had a VIC-20, and Christina down the street had a Commodore 64. So that's what I was working with, and he blew my doors off. And then they ended up moving. I want to say he got moved to a different region, so they ended up moving out, and another family moved into that house. Really cool guy though. And again, when they moved out, that's when I bought the. It was at the end of that summer. They were only there about 3 months. That's when I bought the milk crates full of the
The
D and D,
D&D, right.
the D&D books, and it was like he was like, "Look, I can't carry all these with me." I want to say they moved to like Chicago or something like that. But again, I was like 12 and 13, and I was focused on those books. Um, but yeah, the Amiga could run circles around a lot of people, and for a long time, that was the gold star. If you were in the know and you were into PCs, that's what you had. Um, but then IBM PCs kind of crept up as well as Apple. But as far as the graphic stuff, Apple kind of went in and stole their niche. The CD32 was again not great because the games that they put out for it weren't incredible. They even had a licensing with Nintendo. They had a Mario and a Zelda game. They were terrible because they said they had to be educational, so they weren't really great. But you could run Amiga 2000 games on that CD32. So a lot of people didn't know that, but it didn't even sell over here. You couldn't get it. The closest you could get it here was Canada. Now you could go up to Canada, buy one, and bring it home, or have it shipped, which is how a lot of people here got them. But yeah, basically it was just like a gaming console. And they were in competition with Atari ST. But the thing about it is, Amiga originally was the brainchild of the Grass Valley group, the guys up at Grass Valley that made what became the Atari 2600, the 5200, several other things. They were a research facility up in Grass Valley, California, and they had started work on this Amiga, and they were getting money from Atari. And of course, the video game crash happened, and Atari just, when Jack Tramiel went from Commodore to Atari, he was like, I want to cancel all this money because they were bleeding money. I want to cancel this stuff going out to this Amiga contingent, but I want to take a couple of ideas and incorporate them into the Atari ST, which is what they did. Commodore then swoops in, which is Jack Tramel's old company, swoops in and starts producing the Amiga instead. So, I mean, most of the ideas for Amiga were actually funded by Atari originally, and then Commodore took over, and Commodore started producing them alongside of their computers, and eventually that's all Commodore made. They quit making the C64 and the 128 and all these other things, and went straight to just producing Amigas. They had the Amiga 500, which is the one that everybody loved. Of course, you had the Amiga 1000, which was replaced by the 2000, the 3000, I think eventually the 4000, but that was right before they closed down. And then Commodore failed, sold off their assets, and a German company came in and bought them and produced some of those Amiga 4000. So most of those that were produced by a German company.
I don't think the Amiga was the last of them, though, because I think, unless I'm completely incorrect, I think my mother, when they went to Italy, she bought a Commodore Colt. Is that right?
Colt?
Is that right? Maybe I'm wrong. Let me.
Yeah, Commodore PC 10.3.
Yeah, the Commodore Colt. I was almost positive that's what she had.
Oh, it's a compatible.
Gotcha.
Yeah, it was a compatible.
Gotcha.
It was a PC compatible, so it was a Commodore. It was a Commodore machine that ran like a regular PC.
Gotcha. She was using it for school. She was taking online college courses when they went to Italy so she could finish her degree.
Right on. Yep, that's it. That is exactly what it is. So yeah, it's one of those European companies that basically bought the bones of Commodore, which is sad. Because I think the Amiga, had they have been able to stay on the cutting edge, like as they had gone with the guys, the Grass Valley guys, which they got rid of, we'd be playing with Amigas right now. But unfortunately, again, right or wrong, Commodore was hemorrhaging money. And the Amiga actually came in and saved them for a few years. They couldn't stay on that bleeding edge. Plus, unlike everybody else, Commodore still wanted to manufacture their stuff in America, not overseas and have it shipped. A lot of places were like, oh, no, we assemble here. Yeah, you assemble here. Do you manufacture here? No, Commodore manufactured here. They had their own chip facility next door. But yeah, that's about it for the Amiga, other than get out and check it out. You can get an Amiga 500, go online, look at some of those games and some of the graphics comparison. Yes, in today's world, the graphics aren't as great. But in 1985, they were groundbreaking. The sound was groundbreaking. No one had even thought to do that before these Grass Valley guys were like, hey, I got an idea. And it's amazing. It's amazing. And it's a sad tale because honestly, had they kept up with those guys, it could have saved Atari or Commodore.
Mm-hmm.
In which case they didn't listen to them and they both went away.
Well, and like I've said before, I mean, I have an old nostalgic love for Commodore because I had a Commodore 64 for years, and I had hundreds of games.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was a gaming system to me. Granted, I could do some basic programming on it.
Yeah.
But for the most part, it was a gaming platform. I had my Atari and I had my Commodore 64, and there are some old favorites of mine.
You could write papers on it.
You could write papers on it. Yep.
Yeah.
Because it could work as a word processor too. I've thought for years about Broderbund's. I think it was Centauri Alliance. I think was the name of it. It was so Broderbund did a Bard's Tale, and then they had Centauri Alliance, and the funny thing was you could actually export your characters from Bard's Tale and put them into Centauri Alliance, which
nice.
is sci-fi.
Nice.
But I never got to finish Centauri Alliance. I never finished the game because there was an end to it. And I don't recall ever seeing any of the current mods that has Centauri Alliance, because I would love to get it and I'd love to play it. And that was such a funny game because there was a little hack you could do because you had to find ammunition for your weapons. And there was a hack. One of the skills you could do is have someone who could repair your weapons and your armor and things like that. And if you took a gun that was in perfect condition and you repaired it, it would give you some ammo. And so you could just sit there and repair and repair and repair and repair and get you all this ammo for the weapon. So it was a little bug that they had in there that you could exploit. It was a lot of fun. I enjoyed that game a whole lot. So definitely get out and check it. I mean, especially you say there's a mod out there for the Amiga.
Oh yeah. It's less than $100. It's granted, it doesn't have it's one of the minis, so it doesn't have a working keyboard like the C64 or the VIC-20. You do know that on the 64, you can import games to them, right? Yeah. Well, I mean, the mini is cheap, but if you want the full feel, the D64's again right around $100. I want to say the mini's like 80. But yeah, if you really want to get out there and play with it, find a mod that you can load up on a USB stick you could play it.
Well,
You could go back and finish out Centauri Alliance if you just wanted to.
Well, if Centauri Alliance was available, I don't know that it's available anywhere. I'd have
Oh,
to look, and that's the whole thing. I don't know that they ever have reproduced it for the mods.
okay. I see what you're saying. Okay.
So I don't know. I don't know. I'd have to look because I would like to play the game one more time, and I'd like to see how it ends.
Right on.
Since I never got there. So awesome. Well, good trip down another some history with another computer genre.
Yeah. It's kind of hard to say. It's like,
what am I looking for here?
A line, maybe a computer
Maybe
line.
Computer line. Yeah, computer line. That works. Interesting stuff. Interesting. All right. With that, I'll take over on the murdery side of the house.
Murder.
For today, I got my information off Medium, Wikipedia, BBC News, the Gazette Blackpool, and the Manchester Evening News. And this is the story of the murder of Sasha Marsden, excuse me.
Sasha Marsden.
So our story begins in July of 2010. The Marsden family lived in Stainburg, Blackpool, United Kingdom, which was a small town outside the bustling seaside resort. The Marsdens had young children, one of these being 14 years old, who was Sasha. She was described as loud, confident, and energetic, and was the life of her friendship group. One day after school, Sasha had walked to the local park with a friend who was a boy that was 1 year younger than she was, and they spent their time chatting and messing around when they were approached by a 22-year-old man. The man quickly attempted to befriend them, and before long had started to offer them alcohol, which they took. And being that Sasha was only a 14-year-old child, she soon fell unconscious. And at that point, the man began to sexually assault Sasha. Her friend later said that he wanted to help her, but he was too little and too frightened. And it was only when two passersby noticed what was happening and rushed over to intervene, and they were able to stop the attack. The Marsdens later received a phone call alerting them they had to come to the police station to collect Sasha. And unfortunately, Sasha's life would never be the same after that day. Her mom described how her daughter changed after that day. She began drinking regularly. She was partying most nights. She was having sexual relationships with numerous men and self-harming and running away frequently. She was also a target for bullies at school who teased her over the attack. And that's just unimaginable to me. Why were they teasing her for being attacked and raped?
What year was this?
This was it was around 2000. It was in 2010.
What?
Yeah. I didn't understand that. Why? What's the point of bullying somebody that had been
attacked?
Raped. I didn't understand that one. Why?
I don't get it.
But I mean, kids are going to be kids, and they're. It just didn't make any sense. It didn't make
kids
any
are
sense
assholes.
To me. But due to all this, Sasha was no longer a confident girl or carefree like she had once been, or she had just completely changed mentally. In July of 2012, she turned 16 and began dating a boy named Danny. But Sasha's parents did not like him. But they didn't forbid her from seeing him. They just didn't like him. They were very concerned.
Yeah.
On August 31st of that year, Sasha disappeared again. The parents were worried, and they phoned the cops. But for 2 days, they heard nothing. Then their phone rang, and it was Sasha. She told her parents that she was no longer in Blackpool and had run away with Danny. And she would only return on the condition that Danny was able to move into the family's home.
Okay.
They didn't really want to do that, but they were desperate for Sasha to return home, so they agreed to let Danny stay at their home. Once back home, Sasha's parents began to notice a positive change in Sasha, and in September of 2012, Sasha enrolled in college to study childcare. She settled in real well, and she proved to be very natural in the course load. She later decided she would like to find a part-time job around her studies to earn some extra spending money. Well, in January of 2013, a friend of a friend recommended a job to Sasha. And one Saturday, Sasha told her parents that she had a job interview lined up for the following Monday. She didn't know where exactly the job was, but that the man had arranged to meet her at Madame Tussauds in Blackpool, where she would walk with him to a hotel a few streets away. She would then be given a trial to see if she was suitable for the position. Sasha's dad agreed to drop her off and arranged to pick her up again from the same location once she was finished. Monday arrived, and Sasha's dad dropped her off as agreed. He waved goodbye to her, and a few hours later, he received a phone call from Sasha asking to be picked up again. She was said to be excited when she returned home. She told her family she'd been offered the job. She had even been given £10 for her time, and all she had to do was make up a few beds while her boss talked her through her duties. And she was to begin work the following Thursday. However, nothing more was said about it. Was said about where Sasha was working or the man who hired her.
Presumably one of the hotels in Blackpool.
Correct.
Yeah. Which there are, from what I understand, are quite a few.
I don't know. I don't know much about Blackpool.
Well, a lot of people go down there. It's like their Gulf of Mexico.
Okay. Yeah, they said it was near the seaside. So that Thursday was just any other weekday, and Sasha woke up early to have breakfast and get ready for college. The day was very special with her because her tutor was so impressed with her commitments that she decided to progress Sasha to the next level of her course. Sasha was ecstatic, and for the first time in her life, things were finally starting to look up for her. The evening came, and Sasha's dad dropped her off once again on the high street as she could not remember the directions of the hotel. And at 8:30 that evening, the Marsdens were still yet to hear back from Sasha, which struck them as odd, as Sasha's shift should have been finished, but they decided to give her the benefit of the doubt. Sasha did have plans to attend a party that night with Danny, and they knew she wouldn't let him down. However, sometime later, there was still no word from Sasha, and she was not answering her phone. So her parents decided to turn detectives at that point, and they asked Danny if he knew her Facebook password, which he said he did. And once they had access to Sasha's account, they began to message her friends, asking if they had any information about the hotel where Sasha was working. Before long, they received word that from the person who recommended the job to Sasha that her boss's name was David. And Sasha's mom immediately checked Sasha's friend list for any Davids, to which she came across two. One of those was Danny's friend, so they ruled him out. However, when checking the profile of the remaining David, they saw that his place of work was listed as the Grafton House Hotel in Blackpool.
Presumably near Madame Tussauds.
I would assume so. I didn't look that up. So the Marsdens set out to the hotel, and they knocked on the door, and they were greeted with a very scruffy, unkempt man. They asked if he was David, to which he replied yes. They then asked if Sasha was there, and he said that Sasha's shift had finished hours earlier, and she left to meet her dad. So the Marsdens were now very frantic with worry. They returned home at 11 p.m. and they phoned the police. The police were there 2 minutes later. Two officers showed up, and as the Marsdens were describing their daughter and the situation to the police, Sasha's mother recalled how one of the officers kept apologizing and having to step outside to take a call on his radio. And it was about the fourth time when the officer returned that the news was every parent's worst nightmare. The body of a woman had been found burning in an alleyway, and they believed there was a good possibility that it could be Sasha. So, unknowingly to her family, that was actually hours earlier. Firefighters and police had been called to an alleyway in the center of Blackpool. Later, it would be known that that was directly behind the Grafton House Hotel. There was a chaotic scene which arose when an individual had alerted neighbors that there was a fire and encouraged everyone to come and look. The individual was David Minto, the man Sasha had been working for, and the last person to see Sasha alive.
Okay.
David Minto had excitedly pointed out to his girlfriend that there seemed to be a mannequin burning away in the fire. Once again, it's never a mannequin.
Never a mannequin. Never a mannequin.
It was only when she got closer and had seen blood that she realized this was in fact a real person. In a very strange twist of fate, it was actually David's girlfriend who called the police that would kickstart the investigation. Once the fire was extinguished, the police started to work to try to identify the body. And there was only one missing persons report that night, and that was Sasha. So it was obvious to police that it was more than likely that of her.
Yeah, that makes sense.
The body, however, was so horrifically disfigured and unrecognizable without any distinguishable features, the police had to take Sasha's toothbrush to collect DNA in an attempt to identify whether it was her. I can't even fathom how the family went through this, but 2 days, they had to wait 2 days, and the results came back and it was a positive match.
Wow.
So now the police had to discover exactly what happened to Sasha after her dad dropped her off for a shift and what had gone so terribly wrong that she would never be seen alive again. And it was only when police began looking into the man lurking within the walls of the Grafton House Hotel that the true horror would begin to surface. The police discovered that the hotel actually belonged to David Minto's girlfriend and her mother, and he worked as nothing more than a handyman around the hotel. In other words, he was in no position of authority to be hiring staff.
Oh.
Information also came to light that the hotel was closed for renovations for the winter, and only David and his girlfriend were living there at the time, so there was no need to hire any new workers to the hotel. David was alone in the hotel most of the time while his girlfriend was away at work until 9 p.m. And Minto would fill his time trying to lure young girls into the hotel. Unfortunately for Sasha, she was one of the girls who had fallen into his trap.
He was just looking for a job, man.
Mm-hmm. So the story began to unravel even more when Sasha's dad had dropped her off. CCTV footage captured David Minto walking with Sasha to the hotel, and even though it captured Sasha going in, she never came out. Detectives found a significant amount of blood in the hotel, and despite David Minto's best efforts to clean up after the murder, they had also found her blood-stained top, pink and white training boots, a pink purse, and a mobile phone that were found in the dumpster near the alleyway. The phone had been dismantled and the battery had been removed.
Those are high-top tennis shoes. Mm-hmm. Pink and white training boots, mm-hmm. High-top tennis shoes. Sorry.
No worries. I didn't know what they were either.
They're high-top tennis shoes.
I mean, I'm getting all this information from, British news agencies.
Yeah. We are we are separated by a common language.
Yes. David Minto maintained his innocence, claiming that he and Sasha had talked, but then began to have consensual intercourse, whereupon Sasha had begun to have a nosebleed, leading to the blood found in the hotel. Meanwhile, Sasha's body was being examined, and this would lead to a very different story. In total, 56 stab wounds were found on Sasha's head and the back of her neck, with a further 9 defensive wounds on her arm. To add to that, it was also discovered that while Sasha was either dead or lay dying, she had been further sexually assaulted by David.
Mm.
So David Minto was arrested on July 15th, 2013 at the Preston Crown Court. A woman took the stand to testify against David Minto. In court, he was declared a loner who had harbored vicious fantasies and lured young, unsuspecting, vulnerable women to the hotel on the promise of a false job. The woman spoke how just 2 weeks before Sasha's death, she had visited the hotel to see David's girlfriend, who was an acquaintance of hers. But upon arrival, she discovered she was alone with David, and it was then that he had tried to assault her. A struggle had broken out, but she managed to push past him and run screaming from the hotel. I don't know why the police weren't called at that point.
Yeah, why not call the police?
I mean, I hate to lay this on her because I'm not being victim shaming, but had she called the police then, Sasha might be alive.
Yep.
Today, I'm not trying to victim shame her. I'm really not.
No.
I just have to say, Sasha might be alive.
Yep. I'm sure she thought of it too.
I'm sure she did. I'm sure. During the trial, prosecutor Peter Wright said of the attack on Sasha, quote, "There were a large number of wounds to her fingers, hands, and forearms, which were entirely consistent with what are known as defense wounds. In other words, Sasha had struggled ferociously with her assailant in a vain effort to save her own life." Sasha's family wept as David Minto was sentenced to a minimum of 35 years in prison for his brutal and senseless killing of their fun-loving daughter. A statement from Sasha's family given to the judge said each wound David Minto inflicted upon Sasha had, quote, "stabbed at the heart of each and every one of her family." And they said these things will haunt us for the rest of our lives. The judge, Anthony Russell, said at the sentencing, Sasha Marsden was an attractive 16-year-old girl with the prospect of a happy and successful life ahead of her. You have not only destroyed the life of one human being in a most brutal way, but your cruelty has devastated her loving parents, family, and friends. There is not a shred of common humanity in you. I love these judges.
Good God.
David Minto appealed his sentence in February of 2014, but it was upheld by the Court of Appeals of England and Wales, and the minimum term of 35 years was upheld. Sasha's sister, Gemma Atchison, now campaigns to help sexual assault victims and to change community attitudes, especially among young people. Gemma recently visited schools across Greater Manchester in partnerships with Women's Aid and the Home Office to teach children about healthy relationships, domestic abuse, and where they can get help if they need it. And maybe that's why the lady who testified at the trial didn't say anything, because she was too scared. She didn't know where to get help.
Yeah, I mean,
be. Like I said, I'm not
she got
trying to lay the
away
blame
and
on her, but
yeah, she got away. Hey, I got away, but that's still scarring.
Yeah. Jane Marsden, Sasha's mom, died trying to keep her daughter's murderer behind bars for his entire life. But as her campaign didn't attract enough signatures, she passed away thinking that the man who tortured Sasha to death in 2013 may someday be free and back on the streets. So Sasha's other sister, Katie Brett, now shares her feelings that she failed her mom, who died in March 2024, thinking nobody cared. In a heartbreaking interview for Shots TV, Katie told Lucinda Herbert she actually died thinking nobody cared enough to sign her petition. And I promised my mom that we will do it, or my mom that we will do it, and we didn't. I'm Sasha's big sister, and she was murdered. I didn't save her, and now I failed my mom as well.
Wow.
In the emotional video, Katie opened up about the trauma the family went through as they sat through Sasha's murder trial. She said the judge stated that it was the sexually motivated murder of a child, the prolonged suffering and attempts to destroy her body. The fact that he raped her, it was proven, there was no doubt at all. So it does meet the criteria for a whole life order, which means life in prison over in Britain.
Yeah.
The man is in danger. Such evil cannot be rehabilitated, and it can never be forgiven. He should die in prison, away from society. When he murdered our sister, he ripped our family apart also. We want to make sure he never has the chance to do this to anyone else. Katie continues to campaign to this day for the government to remove. There's a 28-day time limit for applying for the lenient sentence scheme to have a sentence reviewed for convictions of murder. So she's trying to get that appealed so that they can review the case and fight for keeping him in prison for the rest of his life. Yeah. And that's the sad story of Sasha Marsden.
Well, thank you for that. That was a horrible and interesting tale.
Yeah. Mine are never good. They're never happy-go-lucky. So again, thank you. That takes us to the end of another recording week. As always, you can find more about us on nerdandmurdery.com. That's our website, our hub for everything that we do. You can find links to what we talked about in this episode, as well as pictures and sometimes videos. But you can also find many more videos on YouTube, which Zig so often updates.
Yeah, in this particular episode, there's the decline of Amiga and then how it came to pass, some tech specs. It might get a little techie on you, and I'm sorry. I'm trying not to make these things too techie when we talk about computers and stuff, but if you want to get into that, it's in those YouTube videos.
Awesome. Appreciate your work on that. You can also find the link on our webpage to our merchandise site, where if you wish to show off your nerdery and murdery fandom, please do consider purchasing something from that. That, along with our Patreon, our patrons help with the costs that are associated with this show. It costs to keep us on the air, to keep us producing, to keep these shows uploaded on our website, and everything like that. It does not go to fund our fabulous Lamborghinis and fabulous mansions and fabulous trips that we don't take.
Yes. Please and thank you.
Please and thank you. We appreciate each and every one of you. And last but not least, please don't forget to leave a 5-star review wherever you can. It really helps us and helps others find our content that may be looking for the information that we are talking about. So with that,
I have been Zig with your nerdery.
and I'm Geoffrey with your murdery.
Cue the music.